Loving Eliza by Ruth and Nordin, Chapter 7. John was working on the last chair for the table that he'd made when Aaron stopped by. He glanced out the small window and saw that Aaron carried something. John wondered what his brother wanted. He set the chair down on the floor and leaned forward so he could see if anyone came with him. He breathed a sigh of relief. Aaron was alone, which meant that Troy was safely out of sight. Eliza said that she had gone to do some washing at the creek. He had wanted to join her, not because he liked to wash clothes, but because it meant that he could be near her and hear her talk. But she had protested, saying that he needed to finish the chair so he could deliver the complete dining room set to the Camptons. He also realized his money was getting low, and there hadn't been any house repairs to take care of for over a month, so he stayed in his shed and worked. Now he left the shed to see what Aaron wanted. "Good afternoon, John," Aaron greeted. John motioned to his house. "I could use a cup of coffee." "All right," Aaron said. John led him into the kitchen and pumped water into a coffee pot. After he set the pot on the cook stove, he listened to Aaron. "I haven't seen anything at the post office for you," Aaron said. "It's been 3 weeks, and Daphne hasn't shown up. Maybe you should look into another mail-order bride. I brought a paper out for you to look at." As soon as he was done getting the coffee ready, John glanced over his shoulder and saw Aaron open up the paper. "I think the school teacher might be a good one," Aaron began. "She's a little older than average. That might work to our advantage, though. I mean, she won't be as picky as someone who's younger." John snatched the paper off the table and shook his head. "I'm sorry, John. I'm not trying to be mean. I know you're as smart as I am." John shook his head. That's not what he meant. He picked up a piece of paper and wrote Eliza on it, and then pointed to Eliza's little cabin. Aaron frowned. "You aren't sleeping with her, are you? You know that goes against our values. You can't do that until you're married." John waved his hand in a way that indicated he wasn't sleeping with her. "Good." His brother looked relieved. "I don't care what others say. I know you're fully capable of doing it." For some reason, that made John feel good about himself. Aaron saw him as an equal. Then Aaron raised an eyebrow. "Do you want to marry Eliza? Is that what you're saying?" John nodded. "Troy's not going to like that, you know." John scowled. What did he care what Troy thought? He picked up the paper full of mail-order bride ads and wrote a T on it before he handed it to Aaron. Aaron chuckled. "I don't think Troy's going to seek a mail-order bride. He's too interested in Eliza. He talks about her a lot. The only reason he hasn't been out here is because his boss has been working him overtime on the farm." Good. John didn't become a farmhand for this very reason. They could work long and rough hours. He much preferred the idea of sitting in his house, working his own hours. "There is that town social coming up," Aaron began. "I suspect Troy will ask her to go with him if you don't get her the invitation first." John grimaced. That meant that he would have to be around people. He wondered if Eliza would say yes if Troy asked her. The only reason that he would ever go was to stop Troy from taking her. And apparently Aaron knew that, or else he wouldn't have brought it up. Aaron shrugged. "I don't know what to tell you. A pretty woman like Eliza isn't going to be single for long. Even that old Willie and Buck Stanley are keeping a lookout for her." That made John's face harden. "You'd better get a ring on her finger fast, brother." John gritted his teeth as he grabbed 2 cups from the cupboard and slammed them on the counter. "Let me guess," Aaron said. "You've been trying to get her to marry you, but she keeps saying no?" How could his brother know that? John sighed, but did not deny it. "Is it because you're mute?" Aaron asked. John didn't know. He shrugged. Maybe. Though for some reason, that didn't seem right. She treated him like Aaron did, as an equal. So no, it couldn't be that. But what was the reason? He sensed that she was hiding something, but he had no way to ask until he learned to write the words out. "Being mute is not a crime," Aaron said. "Don't be with a woman who judges you on that." John nodded. Of course he wouldn't. It was bad enough to deal with it from people in town. He refused to deal with it in his own home. "Good," Aaron said. John poured the coffee into the cups and handed one to Aaron. Just in case things don't work out with Eliza, you should at least consider these ads. Aaron picked up the paper. It looks like there's some nice women here. Two especially caught my attention. John didn't have the heart to search for anyone else. He wanted Eliza. No other woman would come close to her. I'm going to read these to you, Aaron replied. I'm not saying you're going to have to write these letters today, but at least think about it, all right? Reluctant, John nodded. Why not? The best thing that could happen was that he wouldn't need to do it. The worst? Eliza would marry one of the other men in town and leave him alone. To send another letter out requesting a bride. That wasn't something he relished. To be fair, Aaron began, I'll show this to Troy too. That part made him feel better. John nodded and listened as his brother read the ads to him. 2 weeks later, Eliza decided it was time to do some painting. It's cooler outside than it has been. This way we won't sweat as much. John thought she might be willing to consider marrying him if he agreed, so he quickly got to the task of covering the furnishings so they wouldn't get paint on them. He glanced at her dress and thought it would be a shame for her to get paint on it. She obviously had not painted before if she thought her clothes would not suffer. He went into his bedroom and dug out a trunk full of things from his past, including his mother's old dresses. He knew that he should throw out the clothes his parents had worn, but he couldn't bring himself to do it, especially not his mother's things. While he was rummaging around, he found his mother's wedding ring. It was a simple gold band. He lifted it and tried to judge its size. Would it fit Eliza's finger? He quickly shoved it into his pocket and retrieved a dress. It would be loose on Eliza, but it would do the trick. When he left the bedroom, he found Eliza ready to start painting with her brush. He hurried over to her and showed her the dress. She looked down at her green dress. Well, I should change, shouldn't I? I didn't think about making a mess. John smiled and tapped the side of his head. She grinned. I know. You're always one step ahead of me, aren't you? All right. I'll be back. She set down the paintbrush, took the dress, and departed from the parlor. Turning his attention to the light green paint, he dipped his brush into it. By the time she returned, he had painted around the bare window. He sighed at the sight of her. She needed to eat more. He had forgotten his initial impression of her when she arrived in town. Maybe he could convince her to eat more dessert. That brown candy she made sure had been tasty. She joined him with her own brush. This will look much better than the faded old white paint, and since we already washed the walls, we can just get right to it. He watched her as she moved the brush up and down on the wall next to him. She had a slight smile on her lips, and her hair was pulled back into a bun for the task. He wanted to stand there forever and stare at her. She was the prettiest woman that he'd ever seen, and despite her insistence that Daphne would suit him, he refused to believe that. How could anyone come close to her, now that he had gotten the chance to know her? She was even better than he had originally thought. She glanced in his direction with an amused expression on her face. Are you going to help me, or do you expect me to do all the work? Blushing, he turned his attention back to painting his section of the wall. They worked in silence for a good hour before she decided to take a break. He covered the paint and followed her out of the house, wondering where she was going. When she realized that he was behind her, she laughed. You don't have to come with me. I'm just going for a walk. Though she said the words, she stopped and waited for him to catch up, which he did. He wanted to hold her hand. She'd stopped doing that ever since they went to church, and he wondered why. Of course, he couldn't ask. I think you'll like the way the room looks when we're done. I never did like white walls. I like color. Variety. White is boring. He smiled. For her, white probably was boring. He likened himself to the white walls. Easy to miss, but serving a purpose. She was definitely color. Dynamic and intriguing. Funny how he didn't realize how empty his life had been before she came into it. But he supposed one didn't realize how boring a white wall was until someone put some color on it. He had to admit that he liked the green paint that she had chosen. As they strolled along the path that he had cleared along the tall grass in the prairie, she continued to talk. Sometimes I wish I could fly, like one of the birds up there. I try to imagine what it would be like to feel the air beneath me. They look so free up there, don't you think? As usual, she did not wait for his response. When I was a little girl, I used to run around my house and pretend that I was a bird. My parents thought I was silly, but my pa would humor me, and he'd put me on his shoulder so I could stretch out my arms and fly. When he realized that she had stopped talking, he turned his gaze to her. To his surprise, she wasn't looking at him, like she often did, to see if he was even paying attention to her. Instead, she had her head bowed and a frown on her face, as if she was sad. He tapped her on the arm. Finally making eye contact, she shrugged. I miss my parents sometimes. My life would have been different if they had lived. He made a motion for her to continue, but she didn't. They reached the creek that ran along the property. It was the only section of his land that had a row of trees on it. The rest of the place was mostly prairie grass, though he did have 4 trees spread around his house. He found a bunch of yellow flowers grouped together close to the creek, so he gathered a couple of them and brought them to her. A smile crossed her face as she took them. Is this your way of trying to make me feel better? No, it hadn't been. He had just wanted to show her that he had yellow flowers nearby. He planted some close to his house, too. He didn't plant them near her house. There was no sense in making her too comfortable there. If he did that, she might never think of his house as hers. Thank you, she said. She sat next to the creek and put the flowers on the ground next to her so she could wash her hands. He settled next to her and also washed his hands. Deciding to press his luck, he inched toward her, trying to be subtle about it so she would not notice. When she finished and sat back, he joined her on the grass, happily noting that they were just a couple of inches from touching. He liked this, just sitting next to her and enjoying the late morning under the shade of the tree. He wished they could stay there forever, without anyone or anything coming between them. She collected the flowers and placed them on her lap. How many days do you think it'll take to paint the rooms? Since he could now count to 10, he held up 7 fingers. A full week? She asked. I guess that's right. At least if we want to do a good job. For some reason, I thought it would go faster than that. He shook his head and grinned at her. I know, she said. I need more patience. Things worth doing should not be rushed. Didn't anyone ever tell you that redheads have a terrible time waiting? She had to be kidding. She had no trouble waiting to marry him. His gaze shifted to her hands. It was hard to judge the size of her ring finger from looking at it. He reached forward and touched her hand. John! She recognized the warning in her voice, but he quickly plucked a nearby white flower with his free hand and held it in front of her. She didn't look convinced that his actions were innocent, but he pressed forward and opened the palm of her hand so it was facing up. He placed the white flower in it and collected 2 of the yellow flowers and put one on each side of the white flower. As he smoothed the flowers out, he took one of the petals and wrapped it around her ring finger. What are you doing? She asked. She didn't sound annoyed, though there was a hint of hesitation in her voice. He rubbed his fingernail against the part of the petal that marked the width of her finger. Then he glanced around for a distraction. Finding the squirrel sniffing around the tree across from them, he nodded toward it. Success. She looked at the critter. What is it? She asked. He yanked the petal from the flower and let her hand go. I don't understand, she said. What is so important about the squirrel? He shrugged as he slipped the petal into his pocket. Sometimes I don't know what to do about you. Holding his hand up, he pointed to his ring finger. She shook her head and rolled her eyes. When are you going to give up? He noted a hint of amusement in her tone, instead of the usual exasperation, so he decided to press his luck. Wrapping his arms around her, he knocked her over so that they both landed on the grass. After a startled shriek, she wiggled so that she could face him. He held on to her and threw his leg over hers before she could get up. Too bad those people in town can't see you now. Just look at the way you take advantage of a poor and suspecting woman. Shrugging, he gave her a wicked smile and kissed her cheek. Oh, John, you can't be serious. Despite her stern look, she also laughed. You're not playing fair. You know I'm not strong enough to get away. He raised an eyebrow. She wasn't even trying to get away from him. That meant there was hope, right? Even if she protested, she seemed to be enjoying it. Noticing that a strand of her hair was close to her eyes, he reached up and brushed it away. Noting the softness of her skin, he let his fingers linger at her cheek. I never met anyone more determined than you, she said. You're much too stubborn for your own good. It was true, so he didn't deny it. Instead, he let his fingers drift to her pink lips. He never kissed a woman before, but he had seen other men do it. It looked simple enough. And if it was simple, why didn't he suddenly worry that he could not do it right? She wasn't fighting him. In fact, her hand stayed on his arms. It was a very pleasant feeling, one he wanted to enjoy forever if she would let him. He closed his eyes and kissed her. His movement was stiff. He knew it was, but he didn't know how to relax when his heart was beating frantically against his chest. But he liked the kiss, so he leaned forward for another one. Her lips were warm against his, and she returned his kiss, almost seeming hesitant, but still willing. He let his lips linger on hers, never wanting to leave the sweet bit of heaven that he had just recently discovered. He thought he'd like to kiss a woman someday, but he had no idea just how much he would like it. This, he decided, was the most wonderful experience he had ever had. Reluctant, he pulled away from her. His gaze met hers, and he sensed the uncertainty in her eyes. He pointed to his temple. What am I thinking? She softly asked. He nodded. She took a moment before she responded. I'm thinking we need to get back to painting the house.